Hello, my name is Duncan East. I'm Head of Sustainability at Marwell Wildlife and Chair of the Winchester Sustainable Business Network. I'm very pleased to welcome you to this recording of the recent energy-based workshop that was held at the University of Winchester. All of our speakers very kindly offered to record their presentations so that those of you who weren't able to make it in person don't miss out on the insights that they were able to provide. As always, we welcome your feedback on all of our sessions. So if you scan the QR code on your screen now with your phone, it should take you to a form where you can provide your feedback for us. So I'll leave that on the screen for a moment while you do that. We're very interested in both your feedback on the current session, but also your suggestions for future events, offers to speak at future events or to host our in-person workshops at your premises if you think you've got something of interest to share with us. Or indeed, if there are other locations that you'd like us to visit that we might be able to set you up with. So hopefully you've been able to access that now. And without further ado, I'll hand you over to the first of our speakers. Thank you.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the legal update section of the Sustainable Business Network workshop. My name is Dominic Ballion. I'm an environmental consultant for GEP Environmental, who are part of a Mabbott company, and I'll be delivering this section of the workshop today. So this is going to be a legal update covering amendments or new legislation that has come in place over the sort of last 6 months or so. This is correct information at the time of July 2024. So a couple of general legislative updates first of all, and the first one to talk about is the amendment to the Finance Act 2024. So this applies to tax rates in England, Wales and Northern Ireland and covers landfills disposals taxes. So the standard rate for taxes across England, Wales and Northern Ireland is increasing from £102.10 to £103.70 per tonne. The lower rate is increasing from £3.25 per tonne to £3.30, and the unauthorised disposals rate for taxable disposals made at places other than authorised landfill sites is increasing from £153.15 to £155.55. The other general legislative update to give is the amendments to the Environmental Civil Sanctions Order, and this is essentially a removal of a cap on the amount of the monetary penalties that can be given for environmental offences within businesses. So at the moment there's a cap of £250,000 as a variable monetary cap, and that will stand until 1st of December 2023. But any penalties that have been issued for offences occurring after that date will be uncapped, so worth being aware of if that's going to apply to your businesses. So they're aiming to enhance enforcement powers and promote better compliance with these environmental regulations by eliminating that cap and really exposing businesses to potential financial risk should they breach these environmental laws. Moving on now to a couple of more specific updates. First of all, looking at waste management policy, there's been a couple of updates here. The first is to the environmental permitting regulations. This focuses on Wales only and basically prohibits the incineration or the deposit in landfill of specified types of waste. So those specified types of waste are listed on the screen here and include food, small electrical and electronic equipment, card, cartons and certain textiles. We also have the amendments to the Environmental Protection Act. So again, this came into place on the 6th of April 2024 and applies to Wales only. And they basically set out the waste separation requirements that applies to all premises across Wales, with the exception of domestic properties and caravans. Certain recycling waste streams must be presented separately for collection, and those streams cannot be then mixed upon collection. Moving on to a little bit of packaging law. So firstly, focusing on the producer responsibility obligations. So there's been a couple of changes here. The first of which is that the overall recycling target has been amended, as well as some material-specific recycling targets being implemented in 2024. So these are applying to obligated producers with producer responsibility obligations. So the overall recycling target has been increased to 80% from 77%, and material-specific targets, such as the target for wood, have been increased too, with the target for wood being increased to 45% within 2024. As from the last update, we let you know that the producers of packaging are required to collect and report packaging data about the amount and type of packaging that they're placing on the market. That data is going to be used to calculate the fees that producers are going to be required to pay once the extended producer responsibility legislation comes in from 2025. So we'll touch a little bit more on that extended producer responsibility legislation. So what could this mean for obligated organisations? It means that producers have an increased financial incentive for packaging that's widely collected from householders or recycling, as well as to increase recycled content in packaging. This basically sets out the additional data that packaging producers need to collect and report, and those reporting requirements have become more complex. The financial incentive is implemented through the introduction of modulated fees, which is going to see these producer compliance costs increase. And this reporting, this extended producer responsibility reporting, applies across the entire UK in England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. So what you need to do is from January 2023, you will have had to start collecting your packaging data. So this applies to all UK organisations that handle or supply packaging to consumers and to businesses. And there are certain criteria that need to be met before you are required to do this. So you have to be an individual business, subsidiary or group with an annual turnover of over £1 million and have to be responsible for over 25 tonnes of packaging per calendar year and carry out packaging activities. So worth reading up on those packaging activities to see if your business qualifies for this responsibility. So the extended producer responsibility fees have been deferred for a year. You won't have to pay any EPR for packaging fees in 2024. However, you do have to still follow this guidance and make sure that you're reporting your packaging data all the way back to 2023. You may also need to report under this extended producer responsibility if you meet any of the following criteria. So if you supply packaged goods to the UK market under your own brand, if you place goods into packaging that's unbranded when it's supplied, if you use transit packaging, if you import products within packaging, if you own an online marketplace, if you hire or loan out reusable packaging, or if you supply empty packaging. So a few more criteria just to be aware of there in case you are needing to report under this extended producer responsibility. Another couple of updates to some environmental legislation cover the Environmental Protection Acts of single-use plastic products and plastic plates, etc., and polystyrene containers, etc. So these apply to England, and they make it a criminal offence to supply or offer to supply specific single-use plastic products to consumers across both England and Wales. So for Wales, this is being implemented within two phases. This is to allow businesses basically the time to use up their existing stock and to buy or make alternatives. So the first phase, which came into play in autumn 2023 for Wales, covers plates, cutlery, drink stirrers, cups made of expanded or foamed extruded polystyrene, takeaway food containers, sticks for balloons, plastic stemmed cotton buds and drinking straws. Phase 2 will come into play within 2024 and covers a few more items including carrier bags, polystyrene lids for cups and takeaway food containers and oxo-degradable plastic products. For England, these amendments have basically extended the prohibition of certain single-use plastic products. So those are now including plastic plates, trays, bowls, cutlery, plastic balloon sticks, and polystyrene food or drink containers and polystyrene cups. Another piece of legislation to be aware of that's come in the last 6 months or so, or has been amended within that time, is the use of refrigeration and air conditioning units covered by regulations on fluorinated greenhouse gases and any substances that deplete the ozone layer. So the regulation 2024/573 on fluorinated greenhouse gases basically lays down rules around the use and handling of these fluorinated greenhouse gases and of alternative substances that aren't fluorinated as well. It also establishes rules on reporting data for the use of this fluorinated greenhouse gases, establishes quantitative limits for placing on the market of hydrofluorocarbons, and imposes conditions on specific uses of fluorinated greenhouse gases. Regulation 2024-590 covers the exact same information, but for all substances that deplete the ozone layer, not just for fluorinated gases. So some other legislation to be aware of could include the Town and Country Planning Permitted Development Order 2015-596. So there's been some amendments to this legislation that happened in 2023. So some amendments to Class J, which covers the installation or alteration of solar equipment on non-domestic premises, has been amended to make it slightly easier to get this equipment installed within your business. So it's allowing for the development of solar equipment on a roof slope fronting a highway on certain land that was banned before. That is now permissible. It also removes the 1 megawatt capacity threshold for the installation of solar PV, making it a lot easier to install a larger solar PV array. Class K has been amended as well to permit standalone solar equipment on certain land where the solar equipment is closer to the highway than the part of the premises nearest the highway. So some slight relaxations on the rules around the installation of solar equipment on businesses. Looking forward then, there's a couple of forthcoming requirements that is worth being aware of. The first of which is the Draft Product Safety and Metrology, etc. Amendment Regulations of 2024. So these relate to the EU CE requirements, so the requirement to have CE codes on products. So that recognition was due to end on the 31st of December 2024, but it has been decided that the EU requirements for the CE labelling can continue to be recognised for goods placed on the market in Great Britain. However, it does replace the expiry provision and the associated transitional provisions with a provision that recognises EU testing or conformity assessment procedures. So basically, where manufacturers within the UK have carried out a conformity assessment with EU's recognised legislation, it means that the United Kingdom Conformity Assess, or the UKCA marking, can be used instead of the CE conformity marking. So worth being aware if your products are required to have that CE marking listed on them. Touching now on another forthcoming requirement that covers the deposit return scheme. So what is a deposit return scheme? This is basically a system that is used very widespread across the world as a way of encouraging people to recycle or return drinks containers such as bottles and cans, with the overall aim of reducing waste and reducing littering. So essentially, anyone who buys a drink is charged a small deposit for the bottle or the vessel that it comes in. Consumers can then get that money back if they return the bottle to a collection point to be recycled. And anyone who retails the materials confirmed in the scheme may have to act as a return point as well. So worth being aware if you are a retailer providing those pieces of those food and drink items. So when will it be introduced and what's included? So the first place this is going to be introduced in the UK is within Scotland, and that's going to come into place in 2025. So there's been a recent consultation on when it will start in the rest of the UK and in England, and that's expected to be in 2027. These start dates have been pushed back and delayed due to the COVID pandemic a few years ago. So Scotland confirmed exactly what sort of food and drink items will be included within this. So that includes PET bottles, steel and aluminium cans, glass drink bottles, and they will apply for drinks containers from 50 millilitres to 3 litres. There will be a flat 20p deposit for each container, and that is returnable on return of the item. So that's the end of the legislative update. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed that or found something that's relevant to your business. The other thing to mention is the use of these Winchester low carbon assessments. So this is a service being offered by GP Environmental in conjunction with Winchester City Council. And basically what it is that your business is entitled to a 2-hour on-site audit for your business if you fall within the Winchester City Council district. What you'll do is you'll receive a carbon footprint after this audit covering your utilities, your transport and your on-site renewables. You will be provided with recommendations covering areas including energy efficiency, staff training, renewables and biodiversity. And the report that you get through this assessment facilitates access to green business grants within Winchester. So these are first come, first served, and you have to have had this audit and report done to be able to access those grants. There's a link on slide for further information about those low carbon assessments, but a really good opportunity for Winchester-based businesses. Thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed the talk. My contact details are on screen should you require any further information. If not, I hope you all have a lovely day.
Good afternoon, my name is Marie Taylor and I'm recording this post the Winchester Business Sustainability Network event we had this morning at Winchester University. For those that obviously weren't able to join and want to join online. So my name is Marie Taylor. I'm the director of NatWest. I look after a team of relationship managers who look after businesses in sort of 2 million to 100 million turnover space. And I'm delighted to have been invited to speak at the event this morning. A load of slides, but I'm not actually going to talk to the slides that much. So what I'm going to cover today, through to I actually want, is talk about how we are supporting businesses finance their transition to a lower carbon economy, but we're really focusing on how we're helping businesses be future fit. Future fit comes up with four key areas that future fit businesses are focused on, which is talent, technology, supply chain and sustainability. So obviously my focus today is to talk about sustainability, but one of the things that we found is that actually businesses who want to actually reduce their carbon emissions, reduce their energy costs and in future fit their business, there's a lot of support that's needed. And therefore, as a bank, we've created a number of tools and resources that are all free for businesses. You don't have to be a NatWest customer to utilise them. So what I'm going to talk about is highlight a few of the tools. We've got many, so I'm not going to cover them all off. But I've put the links to the external website, which all of our tools and resources are on. And I just encourage you to go and have a look and explore the different tools, different options, and you can use them with your team in-house, or if you're working with a sustainability partner, then you can obviously use them with them. So the first tool that I thought I'd focus on is our carbon planner. So our carbon planner is the first end-to-end free tool that actually measures, evaluates and gives you 44 actions that you can take. A lot of those are free and some of them need to be funded, whether self-funded or ideally funded through NatWest or Lombard. But it's a footprint and it gives you a number of actions. It covers scope 1, scope 2 and scope 3, as much as scope 3 is available at the moment. We're evolving the tool. We've now got over 7,000 customers signed up on it that have created action plans. A number of our customers have found it really useful because it's been able to them to use as a tool to demonstrate that they've actually got a credible climate transition plan in place and that they're tracking what their carbon emissions are or what their emissions are, and then actually what actions they're taking. It gives you the return on investment and the cost of funding. So yeah, it can take through the whole footprint of your business. Another tool, and it can also do an industry footprint, which is a relatively new one, so you can benchmark yourself where you are in your industry sector, which I know a lot of our customers or businesses that use the tool were asking for. And in 2025, we're getting it into a place where you will be able to use it to help verify what you put into your annual accounts. So as I say, we keep updating and evolving it as we learn more and as developments continue. We also build in legislative changes so that it remains relevant and up to date. Another tool that I thought I would signpost out to you is our EV Planner. So our EV Planner, we've gone into partnership with a company called Diode. It's all they do. So again, it's a toolkit that customers or businesses can use to see if their business is EV ready. What does their current fleet do? How many miles? Where do they go? What kind of journeys they do? But also your employees can use it to see if they're actually EV ready. It tells you what infrastructure might be needed, and then it can sort of support you that whole journey for you. And obviously Lombard can fund all the infrastructure costs, including the charges, as well as obviously providing the vehicles, if that's what you want. The tool is able to use telematic data, so if you're already using telematics to help map your journeys and know what your vehicles are doing, then that telematic information can go directly into the EV planner. And we've also just launched our salary sacrifice scheme, which we believe will be a real game changer here, because we've had so many requests of businesses wanting to take up a salary sacrifice. The minimum usually requirement has, with a number of the providers that provide them, has been 1,000 employees. We've got it to 250 employees, needing to be earning 32,000 and above. And that is the reason for the restriction, is just the cost of implementation. But I think that will help an awful lot of businesses look at salary sacrifice, and they go very much hand in hand. So, you know, do we want a salary sacrifice when how many employees are EV ready? The next tool that I thought I'd demonstrate to you was our DCAT. So DCAT again is another partner. So DCAT, either you can do it as a business, or NatWest staff can get you a report to see if your buildings are appropriate for solar panels. We can produce the report in 2 minutes. If that indicates that actually there is a good opportunity for you to have solar panels on your roofs, then we have partnered with Absolar, who will then take that journey on with you. You get a full detailed report, which is funded by NatWest. And again, you don't have to be a NatWest customer, but it's funded a full detailed report. And then Absolar are able to provide you installers which fall through the highest standard, and they can negotiate your tariff back to the energy provider that you use, and they can manage that ongoing for you if you choose. The bank fund up to you getting a full detailed report, and obviously then it's up to you how much you want to take up the full service with Absolar. I thought another tool that I would sort of emphasise is our partnership with Purse. So on our NatWest Energy Hub, we have a tool where it will help you understand where you can reduce your energy costs across your building. So installation, LED, air source heat pumps, ground source heat pumps, and a variety of other factors, and it will look to see what is possible. A number of the advice and tips they give you, there isn't actually a cost to them. It's just about maybe changing the way you might do things, or the way you might position things in the business. But there obviously are some things that will come with a cost, and again, that's something that our Lombard or NatWest colleagues are able to fund for you. One of the things I wanted to say so far with DCAT, in the last 6 months, the savings for businesses have been 1.5 billion that they've uncovered. So really can help make a difference. We have a variety of other tools, so the Supply Chain Sustainability School, and that all is into retrofit building, and there's a lot of webinars and a lot of training, building contacts. So that's again, and that's all free to businesses. You don't have to be a NatWest customer. And another one I wanted to flag with you was The other tool I wanted to talk to you about was our partnership with Emesis. So this is on voltage optimization. So currently, the way that the national grid give out energy is at 242 volts, and the way that most of our machinery and equipment receive it is at 220 volts. So voltage optimization is a piece of equipment that closes that gap. And if businesses are spending £30,000 a year or more on energy, then there's a guaranteed return on investment within 14 months and a saving of money. A piece of equipment is somewhere between 8,000 and 30,000, depending on the size that you need for your particular business. And you get a 10% discount with partnership going through NatWest with partnership with Emesis. So that again is one worthy to explore, and we've had a lot of businesses taking that one up. So then I wanted to talk about funding. So obviously we're really keen to provide a number of funding options. Lombard do fund an awful lot of these projects. 75% of all the renewable projects we did last year were on solar panels, which is quite interesting. And but we can actually fund an awful lot. So biomass, combined heat and power, air source heat pumps, ground source heat pumps, EV charging infrastructure, LED lighting, battery energy storage systems, solar panels, offshore wind, onshore wind. So there's a big variety of projects, and that's not all of it. So we're really keen to support. One of our USPs is the fact that we will fund stage payments. So typically for a solar panel project, they want 30 or 40% up front, and then another 30 or 40%, and then another 30% at the end. Well, Lombard will fund all of those stage payments, so that the business isn't having to find that money before they're actually getting the benefit of having the solar panels installed. We've also stretched our term, so typically we were 5 years, but we've now moved it to 7 years that we can fund these over. And with some of the bigger infrastructure projects, we will even go longer, 9, 10 years. So again, what more tight, look at the income that are coming, reduced cost savings that are going to be made in order to be able to provide support. We obviously can deal directly with a business, or if there's a special purpose vehicle created where we can then be involved with a legal agreement where we don't have direct recourse to the assets, but we can link up with all the parties involved, and we can provide a funding structure. So this works well with developers, landowners, social housing and other organisations. We're really keen to support. If you're interested in knowing more, please contact either myself, Mary Taylor, my colleague Claire Slater at Lombard, and we'll be able to put you in touch with the right person who can provide you the help and insight and support that you need. Thank you very much for listening.
Hi, I'm Duncan East from Marwell Wildlife, and I'm going to talk to you today a bit about the current state of Scope 2 reporting under Greenhouse Gas Protocol rules, and what some of the changes are we're anticipating in the next couple of years as they go through a review of the sort of way that particularly electricity, but also a certain amount of green gas is reported under your greenhouse gas sort of carbon footprint. So I'm going to start with a recap of the current situation and how we do it at Marwell, and then we'll go on to what we can expect in the future, or at least what we can anticipate. This is going to be a bit speculative because at the moment the consultation is still going on. So this is just an update of where we think things are at the moment. So at Marwell, we started recording our carbon footprint back in 2008. and this was an update in 2014, and this was the point where we started to really tackle our electricity. So this is a good example for today. So you can see that our carbon footprint from our electricity at that point was a significant portion of our total and was clearly an area we had to target. And that's the nature of our business as a zoo. We've got a lot of animal houses that are heated with electric heating. And that's something we can't get away from because of the nature of the buildings and the nature of the beasties that are in them. So they need to be kept warm, and in a lot of cases, electricity is the easiest way. So we've got to find a way to tackle it. So like a lot of people, we went for the rooftop option and we started looking at sort of solar panels and where we had appropriate south-facing roofs. And over the years, we've done quite a number of these. And we now generate about 9% of our total electricity on site, which is great. So that's definitely zero carbon. It's all local, it's all generated, it's all consumed by us. But that still leaves us a big chunk of electricity that we've got to find an alternative source for. And so we went out to the marketplace and we talked to renewable generators and brokers and said, right, let's buy renewable energy for that remaining bit so that we can then report it as carbon zero. And hopefully a lot of you are doing the same. And over the years, we've been with a number of different suppliers, whether that's Ecotricity, Good Energy, or working through a broker to buy renewable energy on the open market. But it's always been the same principle. We wanted zero carbon electricity as our main fuel so that we can make sure we've eliminated that part of our carbon footprint. So then when it comes to reporting, we looked at the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, and this was an amendment that was brought out in 2015, I think it was, which was an update to clarify those reporting rules on how you report on that electricity portion of your carbon footprint if you're using some form of market-based financial mechanism to be able to report it as zero carbon. And this is a key paragraph within the rules. So if you are using the Greenhouse Gas Protocol as your main reporting footprint and guide, and which is obviously most people are doing, then it has this key paragraph that says you shall, and shall is an important word because it means you must do it, you must report it in two different ways. You have to report the location-based method. That means the actual electricity that is coming out of the sockets in your plant, and so will come from whatever is your most local generator, or in the UK's case, obviously we're all one national grid, so we have an average carbon footprint per kilowatt hour of electricity. And so you have to produce that location-based calculation, which is what you saw on that first slide with the 1,207 tonnes of carbon dioxide. But then you can also produce this market-based figure, which is based on your financial mechanism where you've chosen your method of buying electricity and hopefully chosen a method that then results in zero carbon electricity. And behind that requirement are a whole bunch of quality criteria to make sure that whatever mechanism you're using does meet a certain level of detail and quality so that you can genuinely claim that your electricity is definitely zero carbon. And the key point around this is obviously to avoid double counting. So in the UK, we use these REGOs, the Renewable Energy Guarantee of Origin certificate. In the US, they call it a Renewable Energy Certificate, but it's all the same thing. It's a certificate that says this is definitely renewable energy and it was generated and this person has bought it. And by buying that certificate and then taking it out of the marketplace, retired is the terminology we use in the UK, that piece of electricity is considered zero carbon and you can claim it in your report. And then there are various other criteria in there around when it was generated and where it was generated, and was it sort of local to you, or if it was a very long way, it becomes way away, it becomes more of an offset than a renewable energy purchase. So in the UK, we use the REGO, and that meets these criteria so that we can claim our electricity as zero carbon. And so at Marwell, we ended up with this position. We've taken all of that electricity out, we report it location-based as 1,200 tonnes, and we report it as market-based as zero carbon electricity. And that all works quite nicely. But there have been concerns raised around the industry that actually the certificated process is not really fit for purpose anymore because of the way the market is developing and the way that renewable energy particularly is getting a lot cheaper and is now a lot more common. And it's not so much of an issue in the UK, where we have a national grid and everything, all the electricity generators are all feeding into the same network of cables and wires and stuff. So theoretically, if an electron is generated from a wave generator in Orkney, it could be delivered to Marwell. In reality, it wouldn't be, but it is at least feasibly possible. Whereas in other parts of the world, most notably in the States, they don't have a national grid as such. They have a lot of regional grids, and some of them will have very different mixes of electricity on them. And so if you happen to be in an area of America where the bulk of your electricity is non-renewable, you can still buy a renewable energy certificate from an area that has lots of renewables, but actually there's no realistic mechanism that those electrons could have got to you. And so some people think that's a barrier to this renewable energy claim that you're making, because what you're buying is definitely non-renewable, but all you're doing is buying a certificate from somebody else that says, all right, some electricity was generated somewhere, it just wasn't here. And that's fine, so long as that electricity was generated and wasn't claimed as zero carbon by somebody else. But the further away and more remote that is, the more chance there is of double counting. So there's an argument that actually the certificated process is not really fit for purpose when you've got these large scale sort of separated grids. And there's also the issue around when the REGOs were started. In the early days of renewable energy, obviously installing renewable energy was a new technology, it was very expensive, and it needed the sort of energy certificate price support, so that you paid that extra piece of money, which helped support the installation of new renewables. And it was seen as a market adjustment mechanism that made those renewable investments more attractive. But nowadays, renewable energy is a lot cheaper, and in many cases, it's actually cheaper to do renewable energies than it is to do conventional power. And so the purpose of the REGO has kind of disappeared. And it may even be a negative factor that it could be making renewable energy more expensive than it needs to be and putting people off buying renewable energy rather than encouraging it and supporting the business. So there's these couple of different arguments as to why perhaps it's time to move away from REGOs and come up with a different way of doing those calculations. So what are the alternatives if we don't have the REGO method or the renewable energy certificate method for proving our renewable energy criteria? Or the easiest one is obviously what we've done at Marwell, and what they've done in many businesses is to put your own stuff up on your own roofs or on your own land if you've got the space. If you're generating the energy yourself and using it yourself, then it's absolutely definitely zero carbon, and that's a very easy reporting one. But not everyone has the space, or they don't necessarily have the money to do everything on their own site. Or you could be like us, that we're great, we can put up loads of solar panels on our site because we've got a reasonable amount of space, but that only generates electricity mostly in the summer, and most of our load is in the winter when we've got the electric heating. So we've got that seasonal offset. So we can't tackle that ourselves on site just through installing more and more renewables. So we need an alternative for the rest of it. And so there's an option around actually just installing renewable assets somewhere else where you've got a much better chance of generating electricity when you need it. And big organisations like Lego have done this. They invested in a big wind farm in the North Sea. And so they now generate the equivalent amount of electricity as their total annual consumption from a wind farm in the North Sea. And again, there isn't necessarily a precise matching of the time of use and the time of generation, but they are generating the equivalent quantity of electricity. And so they report zero carbon energy on that basis. But we haven't all got, obviously, Lego's assets. We don't necessarily have that sort of money lying around. And obviously, we're not necessarily that big. So we don't want to build an entire wind farm. Perhaps we only need a few hundred kilowatts or a few thousand kilowatts of consumption. And so there are partial ownership options. So you could group together with a load of your neighbours or some local people in your local business community and say, right, between of us, we're going to form a little consortium and we shall build our own renewable generator, perhaps a solar meadow, a bit of brownfield site. You think, great, we can put sort of 2 megawatts of solar on there, and we'll form a little business consortium and we'll essentially sell ourselves our own electricity through a power purchase agreement. And again, by doing that mechanism, you're effectively doing the same thing that Lego did. you're generating the same amount of electricity that you consume over the course of a year and selling it to yourself. And again, that's a nice easy way of proving that you are using zero carbon electricity, because you know exactly where it comes from. And then lastly, you can just form a power purchase agreement directly with one of the major generators. So obviously all the big generators who are installing renewable energy, they're still looking for investment, and perhaps rather than risking the volatile electricity market for selling their electricity, what they might want to do is go into a 25-year agreement with you and say, yep, we will buy your electricity for the next 25 years at a certain price. And then you're guaranteed that price, which is great for your sort of cash flows and budgeting purpose, and they're guaranteed an income. Not everyone wants to go for 25 years. Obviously, you can do longer and shorter agreements. And that's entirely down to the relationship with the generator. So all of these options are around that provide you with a way of guaranteeing renewable energy that don't rely on certification. And it's a much more robust way of ensuring that you are getting zero carbon electricity. And a number of the major organisations, major electricity providers are now getting on board with this and are providing these things as part of their contract mix. So it's not something you've got to go and research yourselves too much. More and more, they're just being offered. So this is Ecotricity. They've partnered with an organisation called Ripple, who are building wind farms in Scotland. And for a investment from yourselves, you can buy into that project and then buy your electricity from them at a cheaper rate. So for a small upfront investment, you get cheaper electricity over the course of your contract period. So hopefully in the long run, you're saving money as well as getting low carbon electricity. Good Energy have a similar product, slightly differently, but they will match you to a renewable energy generator. So for every half-hour period of every day, they will match you to a particular generator that is generating at that time. So you can see for a given month, on Monday the 1st, all my electricity came from, it was a sunny day, my electricity came from a solar field in Somerset somewhere. And then, I don't know, whatever day it is today, it's now a bit windy and a bit rainy, so all my power is coming from a wind farm somewhere out in the North Sea. So they will match you to a generator who is generating at the time that you're consuming. And again, that gives you the evidence that you are definitely using renewable energy. Octopus, they've got another similar product, different again, but same principle. They pull together a whole load of generators into a little basket, and you buy from that basket. In their case, that basket could include your own electricity. So if you've got surplus from your solar panels, they'll sell it on your behalf to your neighbours. And then there's a period where your consumption is exceeding your solars, you can buy it back from somebody else within that pool. But they're all different mechanisms of finding a way to buy direct from the generator, so you're not relying on some sort of certification, some sort of note that says this is electricity. You've got a genuine relationship with the generator. So what's going to happen and when? Well, that's the big question. At the moment, Greenhouse Gas Protocol are saying probably end of 2025 is when they'll sort of start issuing what's likely to be draft guidance. So we're looking probably 2026 before anything genuinely changes in the reporting market. But that's not actually that far ahead if you're in a budgeting process. Perhaps you're already in a contract for a couple of years. So you need to be thinking about your next contract. Do I need to do something differently for my next contract so that I'm ready and I don't find that suddenly when I'm reporting my carbon, I'm not reporting carbon zero electricity anymore. The rules have changed and I've got to start reporting it differently. What I'm hearing from a couple of webinars I've been to, I think it's unlikely that REGOs and renewable energy certificates will disappear completely. There's a whole lot of money and sort of clout behind them, and people who think they're very, very important still, particularly in the green gas side, where sort of anaerobic digestion and injection of green gas into the gas network is still relatively new industry, and they're very keen that they still get the support from the sort of REGO type energy certificates to maintain their sort of price difference and to support that industry as it's getting started. So there's a lot of support behind the REGOs at the moment. So whilst there are a lot of people who say we ought to get rid of them altogether, I think it's unlikely that they're going to disappear completely. But I think what probably will happen is a much tighter set of rules around when you can use them and how you use them and where you purchase them from. And then particularly when they were generated and where they were generated. And when is very important, because at the moment you can quite often buy a REGO that was generated last year. And you can essentially say, right, I'm consuming renewable energy because I've got this certificate, and this certificate was actually a kilowatt hour. It was generated last autumn, and somebody used it last autumn, but they didn't buy the certificate, so I'm going to buy the certificate now. And that's a bit of a strange relationship, and that's one of the things they want to get away from. So there may well be a tightening up and a closing of that window from which REGOs you can buy. And if a REGO hasn't been sold within a certain time frame, then it's just automatically retired. And the same way will be true about this location of where the renewable energy and where the REGOs are generated. And again, that's more aimed at the larger markets like the US and potentially across Europe, where you can buy across large distances. But it could affect the UK market and say that actually if you want to buy renewable energy, you have to buy it from somewhere within a couple of 100 miles. So not if you're on the south coast, buy it from the wind farm off Scotland somewhere. If you want to buy renewable energy on the south coast, then you should buy it from the renewable generator off Dorset, for example, or a solar panels in the New Forest. So I think those are the changes we're likely to be seeing coming in. And that's it from me. Obviously, it's still a bit speculation at the moment, but I think we were watching that space, and we'll come back to you if we hear any more on it. But likewise, if you see any updates and you'd like to let us know about it, that would be great as well. I just can't have a talk from someone at the zoo without a picture of some pretty animals. This is a camera trap image from high in the Himalayas in Kazakhstan, I think it was, and snow leopard and their cubs. And just to remind you of why we're doing all this, and these are the creatures we want to protect, who are very much threatened by climate change, as we all are. So thank you very much.
Welcome to the University of Winchester. My name's Matt Jane. I'm the university's Head of Environment and Building Services, and I'm going to talk to you today about a recent project, or recently completed project, where we have installed some large-scale decarbonisation, mainly in the form of air source heat pumps and solar PV. So one of the areas that I manage at the university, I manage the university's energy environment team, and Laura and Adam from my team are here in the audience today with you. I also manage the university's maintenance department and all of our external service contractors, across the buildings portfolio. And one of the things that I've been heavily involved in since back in 2006 is managing the university's carbon management programme. And this project very much was designed to obviously continue to reduce our significant carbon footprint. So as I said, the university's had its carbon management plan in place since 2006, and we've been doing really, really well. By 2022, as the last academic year, our scope 1 and 2 emissions were down 42% in absolute terms, which is really, really impressive. The graph at the bottom there is our location-based carbon for scope 1 and 2. But what that graph doesn't show you is that the estate has grown dramatically during that time period. We've had estate growth of around 76% from our baseline year. So actually, overall, that is a 67% reduction per square metre of estate. And the university has also always been very keen to work on reducing its carbon footprint. And there was a big desire kind of just before lockdown to implement a bigger large-scale decarbonisation project to kind of further improve our carbon performance. And I think it's also fair to say that we did have a number of ageing plant installations that were coming to the end of their useful life. So, we're now very keen to move away from gas. So actually heat pumps and these kind of projects were kind of now becoming much more important to the university. So we went out to the market in January 2018 to procure an energy performance contract. I'll tell you a little bit more about that shortly. The project actually started on site in March 2021, and the initial funding requirement was that the project would complete by September 2021, which was a little bit unrealistic, I think it's fair to say. That date was actually pushed back to March 22, but due to a number of issues, our project actually completed on site in November 2023. So we're now well within the 1-year defects period for that project, and we've just kicked off the monitoring and verification program as well. Okay, so I'll just give you a little bit of background on the project. So the project was funded, or certainly the contractor was procured using the REFIT framework, which essentially is a framework that exists to enable large-scale carbon reduction programs on large estates like our own. So we went out to the market. We had a bidder day where we had around 20 energy performance contractors turned up on site. They went and had a look around all our plant rooms, had a conversation. There were kind of obviously procurement presentations, and there was a kind of an opportunity for them to ask questions at the end. Now, originally the project had involved the Royal Hampshire County Hospital next door, but unfortunately they had a lot of uncertainty over the future of their estate. And unfortunately they were part of the bidder day, but unfortunately they decided to withdraw from the project before the bids were submitted. So one of the reasons we had such a low return of bidders was actually obviously because the Royal Hampshire County Hospital there was a lot of opportunities there, I think it's fair to say, and Gillian, who may be in the room today, I'm sure I won't get in trouble by saying that. So yeah, we'd obviously done a huge amount of carbon reduction work over the last kind of 15 years or so. So yeah, there were not many easy wins to have for the contractor. However, after we went through the procurement exercise, we selected our successful contractor, which was called Amoresco. They're a very large energy performance contractor, I think one of the biggest in the North American market. And they actually undertook the feasibility project at their own risk. So essentially, rather than paying hundreds of thousands of pounds for the feasibility work, they decided to take that at their own risk, and we paid a slightly higher profit and overhead for the project. So that at the original stage, there were lots of different options on the table for procurement, whether we wanted to self-fund it ourselves as a university. It may well have been a kind of mix of private finance and self-finance. And then we did start to have some initial discussions around whether there might be some kind of special purpose vehicle which would deliver the project, and that's how we would pay the money back to the contractor. However, the Salix Public Sector Decarbonisation Scheme Phase 1 was released during kind of COVID, and as the project was kind of shovel ready, we applied for and received a £3.12 million grant. And the total project cost was around 4 million. So that was quite successful from the university's perspective. So once the investment grade feasibility study was undertaken, we obviously pushed the button and decided to progress with Amoresco as our main contractor. So the project actually delivered building management system optimization across the entire campus and updating some of the older installations. We did a few areas of small scale LED, particularly in the library, where we upgraded those to DALI. We've obviously done a huge amount of work over the years in replacing the majority of the lighting on campus with LED already. And then we installed some solar panels as well to obviously offset some of the increased electricity consumption from the heat pumps. And we installed 34 Auctioner Air 41 split style air source heat pumps to 15 buildings across the campus. Now, as this was an energy performance contract, the contractor guarantees us savings of 500 tonnes of carbon a year and at least £70,000 per annum, and that's based upon a 2019 baseline year. The air source heat pump installations, there's various different setups. Some of them do heating only, some of them do heating and hot water, and some are hot water only. And we've actually just started the first year of the monitoring and verification process to make sure that the guaranteed savings are actually being delivered to us. So it's still quite early doors in that part of the process at the moment. So one of the first fully installed and commissioned parts of the project was the solar panel installation. So we already had 5 existing installations of PV on the campus. Our first one was installed back in 2012, and we had around 86 kilowatts of PV. The project delivered an additional 152 kilowatts, and that's on 6 buildings across the campus. And as I said previously, that was designed to offset some of the additional electricity demand from the air source heat pump on the few suitable roofs that we had remaining. And we were also fairly limited by how much we could install under the grant application as well. The PV was actually installed by Joju Solar, and as I said, it was certainly the easiest part of the project to deliver. So as a business at the moment, we are now generating around 4% of our electricity demand on campus every year, and that was around 220 megawatt hours in 2022-23. So in terms of those solar panel installations, this is an aerial shot from Google, which shows you the majority of the installations on our campus. So we had 6 new sites of solar panel installations at Burma Road and the Stripe. Those are the green dots on the image on the screen. Initially, the Burma Road Student Village also had 2 very small solar PV arrays installed when the building was built, to give us the minimum that we needed for building regs at the time. It's a rented property, which we did work quite closely with the developer to develop. Our initial Bowers building, the orange dot on the bottom left of the screen, that was our first solar panel installation. That was around 37 kilowatts. And then the St Alfred's building was the other remaining initial installation there, which is the one in the middle right of the screen. And we do have a small amount of potential still on the site, particularly at the Marshall Rose Library, which is the orange dot that you can see in the middle there. Okay, so moving on to the air source heat pump installation. As I said earlier, we've got 34 of the Auction Air horizontal split evaporators, and they're installed across 15 buildings. They're very, very efficient bits of kit. The manufacturers say they're up to a coefficient of performance of around 4.2, and they're air to water heat pumps. They do have quite a high maximum flow rate, but obviously running at 65 degrees, they're not going to hit the coefficient of performance that you would expect. So we do generally try to run them a little bit cooler than that. They're very, very quiet. They're around 64 decibels. And we have a range of different sized installations, from single units right the way through to large cascades of up to 6 air source heat pumps. And the images on the screen at the moment are on the Winton building, which is one of our older buildings on the campus. That has got 6 units in a cascade, as you can see. So the picture on the left is the internal units, and then out on the roof of basically we've installed a containerized plant room, and on the roof there are 6 of the external evaporator units. My colleagues in the estates department lovingly refer to this installation as the oil rig. I think it looks quite nice. And they are all, or the majority of them, are hybrid systems, so we have retained the gas boilers for backup and peak heating load if required. And here is a fairly typical installation for heating and domestic hot water application. This is the Bowers building. You can see on the left hand side we've got a very old, reasonably inefficient floor mounted boiler. We then have the 2 indoor units, which are the white boxes in the centre of the screen, and on the right there we have a very large thermal store, which is the flow and return pipe work to the hot water circuit at the top. You can see there on the top right hand side. What you'll also see in between the boiler and the internal units is there are 2 plate heat exchangers which do the heating circuits in various different parts of the building. Okay, so I thought I'd share some of our kind of early results. We're still quite in the first year of real operation with the heat pumps, and we're still tweaking systems at the moment, but things are looking pretty good. We also discovered a few installation issues in April 24 that the contractor is dealing with as a defect, and one of their subcontractors is coming back to fix some issues with the heat pumps. And it's definitely fair to say there's definitely some more efficiency works that we need to do to make sure that they are running as well as they possibly can. So essentially you can see on the screen is our gas and electricity data for the last 4 years, with 2020 being the year that we didn't really use any of the heat pumps, and the solar panels were first installed. And as you can see, the yellow line is the solar panel generation, and you can see that our kilowatt hours has increased dramatically, as you'd expect. What you can also see is that our electricity consumption is increasing, as you would expect as well, given the amount of air source heat pumps that we've actually installed. But conversely, our gas consumption is starting to reduce quite dramatically as well. So our gas consumption over that 4-year period is reduced by 32%. Our electricity consumption has increased by 24%. And as I said, our SPV generation has increased dramatically, 183% compared to 2020, which was the year the kind of project really kicked off. So the question that will be on everyone's lips is, do they actually work? And for the most part, I would say they do, definitely. As I said, we're still in our kind of defects period, and we're still ironing out a few issues. But on the whole, they have been very, very good bits of kit. Certainly in heating only applications, they've been absolutely excellent. There are, as I said, a few minor issues which we are working out during this defects period. And we have now got a new service partner on board after the subcontractor, who was an auctioneer approved service partner, went bust. So we do now have a auctioneer warranty on all of those air source heat pumps. Hot water can be a little bit more problematic. It was a little bit challenging, certainly at the start of the project, to make sure that we were maintaining the required flow and return temperatures on the hot water circuits. But we are now using Legionella pasteurisation by using the immersions within the thermal stores, so we can boost temperatures for an hour to pasteurize the system on a daily basis. We may in the future look at reducing that to maybe weekly, but for the time being, until we're really 100% happy with the systems and that they're working, we will continue to do that on a daily basis. So some potential savings there in the future by reducing the number of pasteurization cycles that we do on a weekly basis. There is one location where the thermal store wasn't large enough. It is something that we were a little bit suspect about when the project kicked off, but the contractor or the subcontractor who installed that installation, as I said, unfortunately went bust. So the main contractor is looking at how they're going to deal with increasing the size of the thermal store, and it's likely they're going to have to put an additional thermal store into that particular building. So the issues we were having there is that because the thermal store wasn't large enough, when the heating came on, the thermal store was robbed of all its heat very, very quickly, and we had some quite long periods where we were really struggling to maintain temperatures in the building. Generally speaking, where the heat pumps are doing heating, we are running the time clocks much longer than you would with a traditional gas boiler. Obviously, we're running at 55 to 58 degrees on our hot water circuits. Sorry, on our heating circuits. So the building does need longer to get up to temperature. And for the first 12 to 18 months of the heat pumps being installed and commissioned, we ran them 24/7 even during the non-heating season, because we wanted to make sure that we were going to spot any defects or any problems. So this summer, we've started to switch off the heating only air source heat pump installations. So I'm expecting to see some fairly significant reductions in energy consumption from those particular sites. So one of the things we're also looking at doing is, so at the moment, when the heat pumps are turned on and the heating season starts, it will heat the thermal stores to kind of 55 to 58 degrees, and it will run like that throughout the heating season, which is a little bit inefficient. So we are looking at putting in some outside air temperature heat curves to control the temperature in the thermal stores, because if it's 18 degrees outside, we may not need 56 degree hot water in the heating circuit. So that's something that we're working on at the moment with our new service partner, and I would expect that is also going to deliver some fairly significant energy reductions over the coming 12 months. And thank you very much. And I'm so sorry that I couldn't be there today. It was a bit weird kind of recording yourself over a PowerPoint. But if anybody does have any further questions, please feel free to contact me on the email address below. I'll be more than happy if you wanted to arrange to come back and talk about air source heat pumps in a bit more detail. Thank you very much.
Well, I hope you found that useful and that it's given you some insights into what you can do with your own business to reduce your energy consumption, reduce your carbon, and think about how you should be reporting it. Our next event in Winchester will be during Winchester Green Week, where we'll be discussing green fleets and electric vehicles and how you can green your fleet successfully and make that switch. So look out for posts about that in the coming days. And don't forget that you can always access our previous presentations and workshops if you've missed some and haven't had a chance to view them, all on our webpage via the Carbon Footprint website. So do look out for those.